This video is sponsored by Game Toppers. Turn your own kitchen or dining room table into a premium portable game solution at a fraction of the cost. Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 763. Today we're going to take a look at Brazil Imperial, designed by Z. Mendes, and being brought over, I believe, to the United States by Portal Games, also published by Meeple BR and Mundus. So what this game is, kind of a 4X civilization sort of style game, all set in Brazil, and also during the time of kind of the formation of the nation that we now know today as Brazil. So players will take on kind of different asymmetric leaders and roles in the game, and then have your kind of traditional 4X things, which is explore, exploit, exterminate, and expand, and choose from different kind of map setups based on the number of players and other kind of sort of scenario, different setups and stuff, different layouts and things like that. So there's a lot of card play, a lot of different types of units and buildings and things that people can get involved in building and stuff like that. So let's go down to the table. I'll tell you a little bit about how it works and then come back and tell you what I think. Okay, so here I've got a map set up for 2 players. There's a variety of different maps in the back of the rule book. There's also at least one that you can download, or sorry, one that you can download for a 1-player game and a 2-player game, because it is a 1 to 4-player game. So here's an example of a 2-player map. You can see some different features here. We're not going to talk too much detail. It's got some water features, some of these kind of hidden things that you will explore and reveal, things that might give you different rewards or things you have to kind of interact with, maybe give you bonuses for building on the spot or fighting the spot and that kind of thing. So players will be exploring around here, and then you have your capital city in each of these different corners. These positions are fixed, but there's sort of a kind of a pseudo draft at the beginning. People will take and reveal these tiles. Whoever chooses this one will be the start player, and then the other tiles also have a bonus resource, like this one has a bonus wood on it. And then you leave this tile in front of whoever took it, because when the end of the game triggers and everybody gets an equal number of turns, you finish out the round, and then that will be the end of the game. Now the end of the game is triggered by these era cards here. So there are 3 different decks. You've kind of got era 1, 2, and 3. And then over the course of the game, you will be fulfilling these objectives. For example, here is just have your monarch out, which is one of your units that's on the board there, which you can't see, which this particular unit. Everybody has a monarch unit. This is have a manufactured good, which I'll explain, and also build a trading post. So as soon as you have done your turn and then you have satisfied all of these, you will play this and then be able to score those points at the end of the game. And then there's kind of like a little sort of mid-game sort of real brief cleanup, and then everybody has moved on to era 2, and then the same idea, once you complete these, you can play this. Oh, so that's era 3. Era 2, and then era 3. So once somebody plays their era 3 card, then that's going to signify the end of the game. You're going to finish out the round and then total up your points. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, let's say I play my era 1 card. That doesn't mean everybody else is locked out from playing that. They can still play that later on in the game. One thing that it does when you play your era cards is allow you to put out these different palaces, which are on the side of your player board there. So you can still kind of play catch up, if you will. And even in the case of the era 3, you're still going to score your points on the era 3 cards that you do have. And it's just a few points. You can see 1, 2, 3 points on that card. But it also allows you to get a palace out. So you might miss out on that if you don't get a chance to actually play it. But so that's how the game's going to end. We're going to play all the way to the end of era 3, when somebody triggers era 3, I should say, and then finish out the round. So actions are taken on your player board, and then you're going to be interacting with this map. So let's look at your player board and look at all the different actions. So here we have the green player board, and the player color pieces here match the board, as well as match some of the leaders that you can choose from. So you can see these are actually double-sided. The green player actually has 4 that they can choose from. There's 2 of these tiles, and you get to choose which one of the leaders, which gives you a special ability there. So if I had, let's say, the blue pieces, I would have this board, and I would get a chance to choose between these 2 leaders here, and then I would pick one of those. Now the other part that's asymmetrical beyond just the leader tiles is the military unit cost there, and some of the units are actually a little bit different as well. So the cost, which you can see underneath each of these, is going to vary a little bit, and then also a little bit of what you have access to, not too drastic of a difference. Okay, so what you can do on your board here, so you can see we have these little tokens for era 1, 2, and 3. And so during era 1, everybody will be using these. You don't worry about these era 2s and 3s, of course, until those eras happen. So I'll take an action. So these are the different worker placement types of action spaces. I maybe will take this one, and then on my next turn I have to move this. I can't take that action again, so I go over here. Maybe this is build a building, and then after that I can go back to this. But you can never repeat the same action. Now as soon as one player activates their era 1, everybody will take and flip this over, and then this gives you kind of a bonus to one of your actions. You take and move that, and you put that underneath one of the actions. So later, now we're in era 2, if I take that action, I also get do this bonus on top of that. And so that's when the first player does era 1. Everybody gets access to the era 2 piece and then the new bonus. So what are these different actions that you can do here? The first one here is you can deploy a unit and draw a battle card. And then if you have unlocked this extra bonus down here, in this case you get to deploy an extra unit and draw an extra battle card. Now you unlock those by pulling these manufactured goods, which everybody has, over to there and finding one that's the exact same shape and doing that. So I'll explain how you actually do the bonus thing here in a second. But each of these spaces has a little extra bonus that you can do. So this first one, deploy a unit, is you can pay the cost. We're going to zoom in just slightly there. And you can see this one costs any of the 4 basic resources. There's 4 different colored resources in the game. This costs 2 gold. This costs a science. This costs a gold and a science. So you pay that cost, and then you take and put that unit into one of your cities. Now you can build other cities, but this is a capital city that everybody starts with, and so you can build and put that there. So you would take that, and then also that action gives you a chance to draw a battle card. Now in addition to the player boards and the main board, you have these kind of little displays over here. You've got these paintings over here, and I'll talk about those in a second. Those are just kind of special action cards that you can get and give you bonuses and things like that. And then you've also got this little display here. Now you can see here, there's 2 types of cards. You've got the battle cards on the left there, and then the gold cards on the right. So in our case, we take that action, we would draw one of these battle cards and put it into our hand. And then also here you have a display of 2 cities, and these are just kind of randomized. And when you go to build a city, you have to build one of the 2 face-up ones that are there, and then you build that. So in this case, we'll get a battle card. You have a hand limit of 3 battle cards and 3 gold cards. The battle cards help you out in battle. The gold cards you can spend as a gold if you want, or you can wait and use them for special actions or bonus actions or little enhancements, so you can kind of wait to use those in different ways. But the battle cards are always used in battle, so when you have a battle, each player will take and choose a number of their battle cards and then reveal them simultaneously. Then you resolve them and then resolve the battle. Now moving back to your action board, you can also get the paintings, which I showed you. If you have the bonus unlocked, you can get them for a little bit of a discount. So let's take a quick look at the paintings. So here you have kind of like 3 tiers of paintings out of these different 3 decks. Now these on the left often do not cost you any resource. So the resource cost would be here in the upper left. Now these in the middle often will cost you a resource. So this one, for example, this bank costs you a gold piece. And then when you get it, it says gold foundries produce an extra gold. So when you do a production action with those, they get an extra gold. And then these on the right always cost science here. So those are just a little bit beefier. And they also will give you points at the end of the game. You can see in the lower right here, in addition to maybe any points that they give you, during the course of the game. So that's what the paintings are. You just take and put those in front of you. You can have as many as you want, and you get those and put those out. Sometimes some of your goal cards in the eras might have you get certain types of paintings or a certain number of paintings and so on. Now the next thing you can do here is build a building, and if you've got the bonus, then you can use sort of any of the 4 resources as any other. And then at the top of your display here, you can see a couple things about the buildings. So in era 1, you only have access to build these 2. And then in era 2, you have access to build these 2 and then the previous era. And then once era 3 is triggered, then you can build these and then basically anything on the board. Now you can see they're kind of like paired up, because if we zoom in, you can see on this side, you've got the sawmill and the trading post. And it shows you kind of a quick reference here of what the cost is to build it. So in this case, you need either a green or red resource to build that one. And this one costs you a wood and a green or red. So I shouldn't say the colors. Green is sugar and red is coffee in this case. And then you can see the type of terrain it has to be built on here. In this case, a wooded area, which I'll show you. And then this shows you what they produce. So the sawmill produces 2 wood, the trading posts produce a wood and a gold. So this is on one tile here. So you have the sawmill and you have the trading post, and all of the tiles are double-sided. So this one here, the cane field and the farm, that's also on one tile there. So you can see what either of these have there. Now this is nice because you can have a little display here of all of the resources and tiles, and this has a nice little cover which goes back in the box, makes it easy to store, but you can just take and put that tray out there and bam, you're all kind of set up there. Makes setup easy. And because these are double-sided, you don't even have to take them out because there's a spot for each of them, and you know what's on the other side of them because this tells you. Now when you put these out, obviously it goes on to the board, and as we could see, this one requires that it goes on a wooded area. And then let's say we did a cane field, these are required to go on the plains there. So you can always build adjacent to your existing buildings, and so you always start adjacent to your capital city there. You can never build adjacent to somebody else's building. So as the orange player here starts to grow across the map, and then the green player starts to grow across the map, if their little kingdoms sort of come and butt up against each other, you know, let's say the green one has a boundary here, they build really close, then neither player can build in these spots here because they're going to be adjacent to the other kingdom. So that is one way of kind of blocking things off. In a way, it's trying to eat up area first, so you can gobble it up before the other person gets close, and then neither of you can build close to that. So again, you always build adjacent to that, like that. Now the next action, which we'll just pan down real quick here and take a look at here, is the production. So what happens when you build a building is you immediately do the production of the building here. So in this case, we're going to produce 2 wood, and then these are going to be on here like that. Now as you start to spend resources, you can either spend them off of any buildings that you can control, or as you collect resources through other actions in the game, you can store them right here on your player board. Now you can have at most 5 resources on your player boards, and that's kind of easy to remember because you've got kind of these 5 actions here, and then also your 5 different military types. So just, you know, count them up that way. That's how you remember that you can only have 5. So when you go to spend resources, you can either spend them from your board or off of the main board from areas that you control. And so once you have cleared a building of the type of resource that's on there, you can do what's called, it's called a renovate, but it's really kind of a production. So once it's cleared, I can say, okay, I'm going to take this production action and just refill it. And you put the goods that were developed on there back on there. But the other thing you can do, and this is important because this is why these tiles are double-sided, is instead you say, you know what, I don't need any more wood. I can flip this over. And now in this case, instead of doing the 2 wood, I can do a wood and a gold. So anytime it's cleared, you can either produce what's showing or flip it and produce what's showing on the other side. And again, that's from doing this renovate action. Now this costs you a resource to do unless you've unlocked that special ability there, so you don't have to spend a resource to actually run that production or run that renovation. Now, we talked enough about these bonuses down here. How do you do that? Well, that's this next action spot here, is this manufactured goods here. So when you do that, you take this action, and then you spend the goods underneath this to unlock that. So if I want to do this first one, I spend 2 wood, and then I can take that and put that down here in one of 2 spaces that matches the shape of that. Or if I wanted to spend the 2 cotton here, for example, I would spend that and stick that in there. So this is the action, is how you unlock those extra spaces. And then these last 2 actions don't have anything to do with the player board, but they are actions that you can take. So you can take this one to grab any one of the 4 basic resources. And again, if you have the action unlocked for the bonus, you get a gold card. And this one is you can perform these trade actions as much as you want. So I take this action, I can turn any resource into a gold, any sort of combos of this resource, so 2 cotton, 2 coffee, or 1 of each to get a gold card and 2 gold, or 4 of the basic resources to get the cards and the gold and the science there. And this one is I can actually trade in 2 combat cards to get a gold and a combat card. Now, you might be wondering, what are these sort of icons underneath here? Well, if you have your little action token here, Then if you're involved in an attack or a defense, you're going to get a little bonus. So if you're involved into a defense, you get +2. If you're involved into an attack, you get +1. And then these other ones have to do with the movement of all of your different units on the board. Now, I haven't told you this yet, but every time you take one of these actions, you can move, you get kind of like a free move for any one of your units. So let's put a couple of units out here on the board. And so let's say I take this action here to build a building. Now I can move a unit. If I've got a unit on the board, I can move it. And then I got my free move here. But the building action gives me an extra kind of bonus move. So let's take a look at it. Now down here, in addition to my free movement, I get to move one of my units into one of my buildings. Well, let's look at our example. So we already did our free movement, and now I can take and move another unit into one of my buildings, which that one happens to be. So I can start to combo up and move multiple of my units like that. And you can do those in any order you want. You have to take the action first, do the whole action, and then you can do your free move or your kind of bonus move based on the action. You can do those in any order. And again, when you attack, you're going to be looking at this number. So you can see this number here. So these are also the number of victory points you get for those at the end of the game, and likewise with these manufactured goods. But this is also kind of the attack value of those units. And so if you're attacking an enemy unit, you might be adding their sort of attack values to the defensive value, which is also the victory points for the building that happens to be there. That also is the kind of the defensive value of those buildings. So you'd be adding those and then displaying any of the combat cards that you might have drawn and adding those to the things. Now, a couple other things to do with these military units. These monarchs here, you have to build a city, you have to build it where your monarch is. So everybody has a monarch. And so we talked about already the different buildings that you can build here at the top of your display. Well, remember I showed you the cities. Here, I'll grab an example here. These are all with a defensive value of 5 and 5 points, and they have all different kind of combinations of resource. The only place that you build this is where your monarch is. And because your monarch can kind of wander off and be not adjacent to your town, your kingdom up here. So let's say the monarch was, I don't know, up here somewhere. And you can build this, and so you have these little mansions here that in your player color to show that. Because you still have the rule though, you can't build adjacent to another player's building. And so that's helpful to mark that and remember whose city that might be. Now you can kind of grow your city, so this could be a tactic to kind of get your monarch out fast, build a city, and then start to develop backwards towards your kind of origin kingdom. Now the other thing to note here while we're looking at this is these sort of hidden tiles here. If you move a unit into them, then you get to pick them up and then interact with them there. For example, this one you'd have to go and do 5 combat strength worth of attacks, and then you'll discard the tile, and then you get a free kind of yellow card, gold card there. If you ever like built on top of one of these, let's say you didn't even look at it or you peeked at it based on a special ability, and you built over it, you would just get rid of it, and it would go away. Now some of these do have you interacting with them and building on them, so you might want to look at that. There's just a couple other things I want to show you real quick before we go back to my talking head. There are some different units here that will allow you to drag units with them when they move. These are the dragoon units in this case, so you can drag units with you, so you can have multiple units kind of attacking at once. So you can want to get these out to do kind of a big attack, because normally you move them one at a time, and so as soon as you move into a place you have an attack, so you don't have time to move the next one in. Now these cannons, and also in the case, I forget which color it is, but they have 2 cannons, but they're called grenadiers, but they're less strength. These can actually attack from an adjacent spot, so that's also pretty powerful because then they're kind of out of harm's way with the attack in that case. So there's a couple units like that, but you can see these get a little bit expensive with the science and the gold and stuff, which is harder to come by. Now the last thing is I talked about these palaces here on the right hand side. And when you play an era card, whether you're the first person to play a card of that era or not, you always get to put out one of these palaces. So I'm going to clear these off because they kind of block what they do with the information. But you pick one of these and just put them out. And so you're always going to put them on basically what this says. So this one here, I forget what this is called, but it's this guy here, this palace. You can put that out on any of your Era 1 buildings. When you do that, you immediately get a sugar, and then you can activate one of these manufactured goods for free, one of the square ones. And this one you can put it on any Era 1 or 2 building. You get a gold card for free, and then your golden palaces here, or sorry, golden foundries I should say, they're worth extra points. And this is a similar one with the sugar cotton places. Each of your manufactured goods, these guys here are worth an extra point. And this one has to go onto a farm. And then this one has to go onto one of the big cities you built. And this one you get a combat card, and then each of your military units is worth an extra point. So everybody has access to these same palaces. They're the same for everybody. But that's the other kind of little bonus thing that you'll have access to. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so that is Brazil Imperial. Let's go through my 3 pillars of review. We'll talk about player count. Now, I've played it with 1, 2, and 4 players. I would say I liked it at all the player counts except for 1. Now, the 1 player thing is basically sets up a scenario, and there's a free one online that you can download. I didn't play that one, but I played the one that came with the rules in the game. And I just didn't like it. It was just kind of like you play 20 turns, complete these objectives. There's no like AI or anything kind of acting back on you. It's just kind of like a little kind of small historical scenario. But for me, honestly, if I looked at it, because it says on the box 1 to 4 players, I feel like that's not really a game. Like it's kind of it's a good intro probably. I didn't play that first, but I could see it being a good intro to playing the game. So if you got the game and you wanted to set it up and play through that, I think it would do more than the job of teaching you to play, but that's all it would do. Like I don't feel like this is actually a 1-player game because it just doesn't feel like a fleshed out solo mode to me. Now I will say with the 2 and the 4 player, I really liked it at 2 player and I really liked it at 4 player. I think 4 player is my favorite kind. I haven't played at 3, but I feel pretty comfortable saying 4 player is the way to play this game. But again, I really liked it at 2 player. I like that you can kind of grow and shrink the map. And there's a few different maps. There's a couple of maps online for I think only 1 and 2 player. I haven't played any of those yet, but it works really well at 2 player. But to me, to get kind of the kind of epic feel of it, that you kind of want out of these 4X games, you want the extra players there on the table because you want to kind of have to be watching your 6 and watching your different flanks and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the 2 players are inevitably just going to kind of run into each other. And then you're going to have some combats there kind of on the edges of your frontier, so to speak, which is fine because it really works well in this game how they kind of handle that combat. But to me, I like the extra side. I like kind of the jockeying for position and being tactical about carving out land and having to watch all the angles and stuff like that. And it doesn't take too long. So the next thing I talk about usually is playtime, and this says 100 minutes. And what is that? 100 minutes it's almost 2 hours, a little over an hour and a half. I would say a 2-player game definitely you could get done in about an hour. Once everybody knows how to play the game, it goes pretty quick. In a 4-player game, gosh, I wish I would have timed it. It was less than 3 hours for sure. So it was probably a little bit north of 2 hours, but I think 3 people there besides me it was their first game. So it was it takes a little bit of getting used to. The game is really straightforward and the rules are well done and it's easy to explain. It doesn't really have any problems that way. But kind of figuring out what you want to do and how the game all kind of clicks together does take a little bit of time. So that first play is going to be a little bit longer. I could see this with 4 players theoretically getting done probably right at the 2-hour mark. I think 100 minutes is a little bit optimistic, but what do I know? But it is pretty straightforward. Now let's kind of branch into my last pillar and like kind of what is this game like? It's a lot like a lot of 4X games. It really kind of visually reminds me of the Civilization New Dawn game from Fantasy Flight, so it's kind of in that ballpark. Or something like Clash of Cultures or Eclipse or something like that. So it's in that kind of same realm, but this is a different kind of vibe, a different style of game because there is combat, there is attacking, and there is sort of tactical strategy of moving your units and stuff around on the board, but it's handled in a very kind of, I don't think this is the right word, but it feels like it's a good starting point to get me to what I'm trying to say, is it's passive aggressive. So a lot of interaction in Euro games, traditional Euro games is passive aggressive. I took your action, I did this, I exploited this resource engine thing a little bit differently than you, so and so. Now this is very sort of confrontational, interactive, but it's done in a way that I think is a lot better in terms of folks that get a feel bad type of thing when their stuff is taken away from them in games. It's like, I built out this empire or whatever, and now you started chopping it to pieces, and now I feel bad because I didn't have a good time. This is a little different that way, where you really try to expand out your buildings, and I kind of mentioned the kind of monarch strategy of kind of rushing that out and sort of carving that up, where it's kind of more of an area control thing, but it doesn't really feel like area control, but it feels like just kind of carving, almost like Tigris and Euphrates or Samurai or Through the Desert, that kind of thing, where you kind of try to carve it up and then have this for yourself without really taking away anything from anybody that they already have. You might take away something that they wanted to get to, but you don't take away something they already own and then reduce them down. You just kind of reduce their potential. Now you can, with your military units, go and take over a building and hold it, but you don't take it over for good. Your military unit has to stay there. If you put your military on a unit and they have like a gold foundry, like you have access to that. So now when you produce or renovate, you can generate gold. If there's any gold on there, you can just take it and spend it. But if you move your military unit off of there, then you've lost it. It goes right back to the person that had it. So it's a very temporary kind of hold, and they can of course come and attack and knock you off. Once your units die, I didn't explain this in the rules because I wanted to wait till now. Once the units die, they go back to your board, but you don't have to spend to deploy them again. You do have to take the action to deploy them again, so you have to kind of waste your efficiency a little bit, but you're not down resources, right? If you spent 2 gold to get out your Dragoon or your Monarch or whatever it was, you don't have to spend 2 gold again. You just have to redeploy them. So I like that thematically as well, because sometimes in a war units will get totally wiped out, but a lot of times they don't. A lot of times they go back, they regroup, you cut their size in half, they kind of recalibrate, and then they come back out. A lot of times, until the end of the war when they're totally wiped out. So you still have to reuse the action, but you don't have to spend all the same amount of money to get that up. And so it doesn't really feel like it snowballs against you at all. And that's one thing that I think this achieves, more than probably any 4X that I've seen, is kind of sort of subverting that snowball effect. And so to me, that makes this a really kind of a neat game to recommend, because there's a lot of people that I know that like more of the Euro style games, and they're kind of intrigued by these sometimes, but they're like, I don't like to have my face kicked in and not have fun for an hour and a half, because I like to build my engine and do my thing, and that's the kind of game that I like to play. But this kind of straddles the best of both worlds in a way, because there's a lot of cool economic stuff, because you get the little bonuses from the paintings, and you have the whole renovate thing, which is really cool, where you can kind of flip the buildings and get different types of resources to try to hit your era goals and all that stuff, and sort of build all that stuff out, get the goods manufacturing out. And so there's that little kind of economic engine there on your player board. As you do actions, they get cheaper and better and more advanced and all that. So it has that, and again, it has that kind of technology sort of idea to it, without being like a really crazy technology tree. I can think of Clash of Cultures, which I love, which is this huge player board with 40 technologies on it. And to teach that is just okay, I've taught you how to play the game. That took 20 minutes. Let's spend the next 25 minutes talking about these technologies. That's a turnoff for people. Where this is cool because it's oh, I have this thing, and so you just boom, you move the shape down, and now the technology is a little bit better. And so that's cool. So this is kind of in that nice middle ground of a 4X, almost a Civ style game, that a lot of people want to find, that's only an hour and a half, 2 hours to play. This doesn't quite, it's really kind of on the verge of being a civilization game that's very focused obviously on one civilization. But I don't know, it doesn't really quite get there, but I think for a lot of people it's plenty in terms of that civilization quality, because most times when you ask somebody, hey, you want to play a civilization game, they want something really kind of just dramatically complex and interactive that goes across multiple vast eons of technology and differences and stuff like that. And this is very kind of laser focused. So this is cool, and there's a lot of other neat little things about it, because there's a little history book about Brazil. I feel like people from Brazil were pretty involved with the game, and in this game I think it's been supposed to have been coming out for 2 or 3 years now. It's just been kind of in development hell in a lot of ways. So, but maybe that extra time is really what it needed to sort of kind of shave off any rough edges it might have had. So this is an interesting style game, and I'd be curious to see if this almost could be like a system of a style of game where you kind of would meet the needs of some of those people that want kind of a Civ-like experience, but don't want to like play for 3 hours and then the last hour and a half is just like not having fun and because their civilization's been crushed. This gives you stuff to do. I mean, it's kind of in and it's out, and you start off right away, kind of doing your engine-y stuff, and then you can really develop that, and you really kind of try to carve out that territory to churn and burn that engine. And it's not solely focused on all the combat and taking stuff away from people. So I definitely recommend folks at least take a look at this Brazil Imperial. If you're over here in the States, Portal's going to be bringing it over. So definitely take a look at it. Thanks.